This is one of the most recognizable fighting styles in the world, both amateur and professional, involving attack and defense with the fists for 3 to 12 rounds. But there are not too many who use it in the Street Fighter universe. This style is boxing, and I got the information for you right here. So, let's get into it. Origin and real-world influence. Boxing, as a formal Olympic event, made its debut at the 23rd Olympiad in 688 BCE, but the roots of fist fighting stretch back far earlier into mankind's prehistory. Evidence of boxing can be found in Sumerian relief carvings from the 3rd millennium BCE, and Egyptian depictions from around 1350 BCE show both boxers and spectators. Early contests were bare-knuckle affairs, with only basic wrist support. It wasn't until around 1500 BCE, on a Minoan vase, that we see the first glimpse of gloves, helmeted boxers wearing stiff plates strapped to their fists. The Greeks took boxing to another level, developing the first known rules for the sport. Their matches were brutal and had no rounds, continuing until one fighter submitted or could no longer continue. Clinching was forbidden, and contests were often held outdoors, where the harsh sun and heat added to the challenge. Despite the violence, Greek society held boxing in high regard, even as it left many fighters disfigured or dead. Homer's Iliad recounts a particularly bloody bout. By the 4th century BCE, Greeks had replaced simple leather straps with sharp thongs that could lacerate skin, and used padded gloves for practice, but these were never worn in actual contests. Roman boxing was even more vicious, with the introduction of the caestus, a glove reinforced with metal lumps or spikes, making it a weapon as much as a piece of equipment. Fights often took place in gladiatorial arenas, where the losers could expect death rather than a mere defeat. For centuries after the fall of the Roman Empire, boxing disappeared from the Western world, overshadowed by the resurgence of armed combat and a general decline in interest in fist fighting. However, detailed records of similar sports continued to surface in Italy and Russia from the 12th to 17th centuries. By the early 16th century, bare-knuckle boxing re-emerged in England, gaining popularity as a form of prize fighting. The first recorded match took place in 1681, and the sport soon became known as boxing. James Figg, the first English bare-knuckle champion in 1719, fought not only with fists but also with swords and cudgels. Early boxing matches were chaotic affairs, no weight classes, no rounds, no referees, just brutal, no-holds-barred fighting. In 1713, Sir Thomas Parkins published a manual that detailed techniques like headbutting and eye gouging, which would be considered illegal in modern boxing. The first set of standardized rules, known as the Broughton Rules, were introduced in 1743 by boxer Jack Broughton, who sought to reduce the fatalities in the sport. These rules introduced concepts like a 30-second count for a downed fighter and prohibited certain illegal moves like hitting a downed opponent or grabbing below the waist. Interestingly, fighters were allowed to drop to one knee to end the round and recover, but this tactic was seen as unmanly and often disallowed by the seconds in the corner. These early rules laid the groundwork for modern boxing, although the fighters still used different techniques to avoid injuring their hands, which weren't protected by heavy gloves. By the 19th century, boxing had evolved into a more regulated sport. The London Prize Ring rules established important regulations still in use today, such as banning gouging, kicking, or using foreign objects in the fight. Boxing's reputation as a brutal but respected sport earned it the nickname the Sweet Science from sports writer Pierce Egan, who coined the term to describe the mix of strategy and physicality in bare-knuckle fighting. Boxing even became a way to settle disputes, as in 1790, when two women, Mary Farmay and Susanna Locker, fought for the affection of a man in a formal, well-documented contest. Today, boxing is a multi-billion-dollar industry, with young talent emerging from some of the most impoverished areas in the world. Places like Mexico, Africa, South America, and Eastern Europe are rich with aspiring athletes who hope to rise to the top of the sport. In the United States, boxing still thrives in urban centers like New York and Chicago, where many young fighters come from the streets. Driven by the same hunger and grit that fueled boxing's evolution over the centuries. Despite its decline in popularity among the American middle class, boxing remains a global sport, with a rich history and a future driven by the ambition of its fighters. In-game history. While the game universe certainly exaggerates the abilities of its characters, Street Fighter's boxing techniques remain one of the most grounded and recognizable martial arts representations in the series. These characters also reflect the often problematic aspects of professional sports and fighting games, coming up with creative moves to match the level of abilities that the series has overall, and I think that is why there are not as many boxing characters as there are wrestling characters. But when it is done right, you will have characters that are just as good as the energy-throwing fighters in the series. Balrog, inspired by Mike Tyson, employs his unique peekaboo technique in the Street Fighter series. This stresses maintaining the gloves in front of the face and bobbing and weaving the body to avoid strikes while gaining momentum for devastating punches. Balrog, on the other hand, disregards the rules and employs headbutts, stomping, tripping, and bites, alluding to Mike Tyson's reputation as a rule-breaker and lousy sportsman. Dudley fights in the southpaw style, which involves the left side taking the lead. He emphasizes on talent and technique for fast strikes and long-range defense. His dominant hand is his left arm, which is kept back to allow for a wider swing and greater assaults. Ed uses a boxing method called psycho boxing that is laced with psycho power. While Ed's approach in Street Fighter V is more kickboxing based, he is rebuilt in Street Fighter VI to be an outboxer, throwing long-range punches to maintain distance before striking hard when the opponent makes a mistake. In the Final Fight series, the style is most portrayed by the Mad Gear Gang thugs and some of the thugs in the Cross Skull Gang as well. In Final Fight Streetwise, you can see the style within the Pit Fighters and Kyle Travers himself. In Rival Schools, the style is not heavily shown. Or represented through multiple characters. Principles within the style. Style is sometimes defined as the strategic approach a fighter employs throughout a battle. Every fighter's style is unique, as it is dictated by the individual's physical and mental characteristics. Boxing has three major styles: outer fighter, brawler, and inside fighter. These styles may be separated into various distinct subcategories, such as counter-puncher, etc. The primary principle of the styles is that each has an advantage over one but a disadvantage over the other. It's the rock-paper-scissors scenario. Boxer beats brawler, brawler beats swarmer, and swarmer beats boxer. Boxer outfighter. A traditional boxer or stylist, sometimes known as an outfighter, strives to establish distance between himself and his opponent by fighting with quicker, longer-range blows, most notably the jab, and eventually wearing his opponent down. Because of their dependence on lesser punches, outfighters are more likely to win by point decision than by knockout. However, some have impressive knockout records. They are sometimes considered as the finest boxing strategists because of their ability to control the tempo of the fight and lead their opponent, gradually wearing him down while displaying more skill and elegance than a brawler. Outfighters require reach, hand quickness, reflexes, and footwork. Muhammad Ali is a notable boxer outfighter. Boxer puncher. A boxer puncher is a well-rounded boxer who can fight at close range using technique and power, frequently knocking opponents out with a combination or, in rare cases, a single blow. Their movement and tactics are similar to those of an outfighter, except they are often less fluid. Rather than winning by decision, they want to wear down their opponents with combinations before moving in to score the knockout. To use this method effectively, a boxer must be well-rounded. Roy Jones Jr. is a notable boxer puncher. Counter-puncher. Counterpunchers are slick, defensive fighters who frequently take advantage of their opponent's errors to win, either by knockout or, more preferable, on the scorecards. After avoiding or blocking shots with their well-rounded defense, they instantly surprise the opponent with a well-timed and positioned punch. When facing a proficient counterpuncher, a fight can devolve into an attrition war in which every shot is a fight in and of itself. Therefore, it is necessary to constantly feint and be able to avoid telegraphing one's punches when battling counterpunchers. Good reflexes, a high degree of awareness and prediction, pinpoint precision, and speed in both striking and footwork are necessary for success with this style. By making their opponents miss their punches, counterpunchers typically wear them down. The opponent becomes tired more quickly the more hits they miss, and the psychological ramifications of not being able to hit will begin to set in. The counterpuncher frequently attempts to completely outshine their opponent, not only physically but also emotionally and cognitively. This fighting strategy can be quite challenging, particularly when facing more experienced opponents, but it's frequently worth it to win a bout without getting struck. To outmaneuver and chip away at their opponents, they typically attempt to avoid the center of the ring. A large advantage in counter-hitting is the forward momentum of the attacker, which drives them further into your return strike. As such, knockouts are more common than one would expect from a defensive style. The example of a notable counterpuncher is Floyd Mayweather Jr., Brawler Slugger. In the ring, a brawler is a boxer who typically lacks skill and footwork but compensates for it with overwhelming hitting strength. Due to their limited mobility, many brawlers prefer a more steady, less mobile platform and find it challenging to keep up with opponents who move quickly. Additionally, they might have a propensity to disregard combo punching in favor of one-handed beatdowns and slower, more potent single punches. Successful brawlers must be able to withstand a significant amount of punishment since their slowness and predictable punching style frequently leave them vulnerable to counterpunches. A brawler's most important assets are power and chin. Because brawlers are trained to take punches well, they typically do well enough versus other fighting styles despite being more predictable and easy to strike. Because they concentrate on delivering massive, powerful blows rather than smaller, faster ones. They frequently have a higher probability than other fighting techniques of knocking out their opponents. To build strength and endurance, they frequently concentrate on training their upper body rather than their full body. Because of their strength, size, and capacity for absorbing blows, they also seek to terrify their opponents. George Foreman is a notable example of a brawler slugger. Swarmer Infighter. Swarmer's infighters try to stay close to their opponent while delivering powerful uppercuts and hook combinations. This style was popularized by primarily Mexican, Irish, Puerto Rican, Mexican-American, and Irish-American fighters. A good chin is frequently necessary for an infighter to be successful because swarming typically entails taking a lot of jabs before they can get inside where they are more effective. Because they are often shorter and have a shorter reach than their opponents, infighters are more effective at close quarters where punching is awkward due to their opponent's longer arms. Nonetheless, a number of competitors who are tall for their class have demonstrated a fair amount of skill in both in and out fighting. The essence of a swarmer is relentless hostility. Many short infighters take advantage of their stature, using a bob-and-weave defense that involves bending at the waist to sneak underneath or to the sides of oncoming blows. Unlike blocking, getting an opponent to miss a punch affects equilibrium. Nonetheless, this allows for forward movement across the opponent's extended arm while leaving the hands open to react. Infighters have a particular edge in that while throwing uppercuts, they can direct their whole body weight behind the strike. Mike Tyson was famed for his deadly uppercuts. Marvin Hagler was noted for his tough chin, striking power, body assault, and stalking of his opponents. Some infighters, like Mike Tyson, have been recognized for being infamously difficult to strike. The key to a swarmer is aggression, endurance, chin, and bobbing and weaving. All fighters have primary talents with which they are most comfortable, but genuinely excellent fighters may frequently include auxiliary methods when confronted with a specific obstacle. For example, an outfighter would occasionally plant his feet and counter-punch, yet a slugger may have the energy to pressure battle with his power blows. The long history of boxing's evolution and popularity contribute to the fusion of several martial arts and the formation of new ones based on them. For example, fighting Sambo was created by combining boxing and sportive Sambo methods. Boxing stances. The current boxing stance differs significantly from the traditional boxing stances of the 19th and early 20th centuries. The current posture has a more upright vertical armed guard, as opposed to the more horizontal, knuckles-facing forward guard employed in the early 20th century. In a completely upright posture, the boxer's legs are shoulder-width apart, with the rear foot a half-step ahead of the lead guy. Right-handed or orthodox fighters lead with their left foot and fist. Both feet are parallel, with the right heel off the ground. The lead hand is held vertically approximately 6 inches in front of the face, at eye level. To defend the body, hold the rear hand beside the chin and tuck the elbow into the ribs. To prevent strikes to the jaw, which frequently result in knockouts, the chin is tucked into the chest and maintained slightly off-center. The wrists are slightly bent to prevent harm when punching, and the elbows are tucked in to protect the ribs. Some boxers fight from a crouch, leaning forward with their feet close together. The depicted posture is known as the textbook stance, and fighters are encouraged to experiment with it after mastering it as a foundation. For example, many swift fighters keep their hands down and use nearly exaggerated footwork, whereas brawlers or bully fighters slowly stalk their opponents. Boxers maintain their stance by taking the initial stride in any direction with the foot already leading in that direction. Various stances allow for various body weight positioning and focus, which may affect how forceful and explosively a punch may be thrown. For example, a crouching posture positions the body weight more front over the lead left leg. If a lead left hook is launched from this stance, it will cause a tremendous springing movement in the lead leg, resulting in an explosive punch. Using an upright stance or placing the majority of the body weight over the back leg would not allow for the successful generation of this springing action for this strike. Mike Tyson was an avid user of this power punching technique with a crouching stance. An isometric preload is another name for the initial placement of the body weight over the bent lead leg. For orthodox fighters who are not used to taking jabs, hooks, or crosses from the other side. Left-handed or southpaw fighters' employment of a mirror version of the orthodox stance might cause issues. In contrast, the southpaw position is susceptible to a straight right hand. While many European fighters stand with their body inclined farther to the side, North American fighters typically choose a more balanced stance, facing the opponent nearly squarely. The way the hands are positioned can also differ. Some fighters would rather hold both hands up in front of their faces, which puts them at risk for body strikes. Punches. The jab, cross, hook, and uppercut are the 4 fundamental punches in boxing. Power punches are any punch that isn't a jab. The left hand is the lead hand and the right hand is the rear hand of a boxer who is right-handed. The hand positions are inverted for a southpaw or left-handed boxer. The following is predicated on a right-handed fighter for clarity. Jab, a rapid, straight blow delivered with the lead hand from the guard posture. The jab is usually delivered from the side of the torso rather than in front of it. It is accompanied by a minor, clockwise movement of the torso and hips, and the fist spins 90 degrees before becoming horizontal upon impact. As the blow reaches full extension, the lead shoulder can be raised to protect the chin. The rear hand remains near the face to protect the jaw. After making contact with the target, the lead hand swiftly retracts into a guard position in front of the face. The jab is regarded as the most crucial punch in a boxer's repertoire because it provides adequate cover while leaving the least space for the opponent's counterpunch. It has the greatest reach of any punch and requires minimal commitment or significant weight transfers. Because of its low power, the jab is frequently used to assess distances, test an opponent's defenses, harass an opponent, and build up stronger, more powerful strikes. For enhanced force, consider adding a half step, which moves the full body into the blow. Some notable boxers who have been able to develop relative power in their jabs and use it to punish or wear down their opponents to some effect include Larry Holmes and Vladimir Klitschko. Cross: a forceful, straight punch delivered with the backhand. The backhand is launched from the chin, crossing the body and traveling directly to the target. The back shoulder is extended forward till it touches the outside of the chin. At the same time, the lead hand is withdrawn and tucked against the face, protecting the inside of the chin. As the cross is thrown, the body and hips are twisted counterclockwise to increase force. An ideally stretched cross is defined as the shoulder of the striking arm, the knee of the front leg, and the ball of the front foot all being on the same vertical plane. Weight is also transmitted from the rear foot to the lead foot, causing the rear heel to move outward as it serves as a fulcrum for the transfer of weight. The cross's force comes from body rotation and quick weight shift. A half step forward can be added, similar to the jab. After throwing the cross, rapidly retract the hand and resume the guard position. It can be used to counter-punch a jab by aiming for the opponent's head, or to build up a hook. The cross is also known as a straight or right, especially if it does not cross the opponent's outstretched jab. Hook: a semicircular punch delivered with the lead hand to the side of the opponent's head. From the guard posture, the elbow is dragged back with a horizontal fist, yet in recent times, a large percentage of fighters throw the hook with a vertical fist. The backhand is tightly tucked against the jaw to protect the chin. The torso and hips move clockwise, driving the fist into a tight, clockwise arc across the front of the body before colliding with the target. At the same time, the lead foot pivots clockwise, pointing the left heel outward. When the hook makes contact, its circular course comes to an abrupt end, and the lead hand is rapidly returned to the guard position. A hook can also be used to target the lower body, and this technique is frequently referred to as the rip to distinguish it from the traditional head hook. The hook can also be thrown with the backhand. Famous left hookers include Joe Frazier, Roy Jones Jr., and Mike Tyson. Uppercut: a vertical, rising blow delivered with the backhand. From the guard position, the torso shifts slightly to the right, the rear hand dips below the level of the opponent's chest, and the knees bend slightly. From this stance, drive the rear hand forward in a rising arc toward the opponent's chin or torso. Simultaneously, the knees quickly push upwards, the torso and hips rotate anti-clockwise, and the rear heel turns outward, replicating the crossbody movement. The uppercut's strategic effectiveness is based on its capacity to lift an opponent's body, knocking it off balance for subsequent assaults. The right uppercut followed by a left hook is a lethal combination in which the uppercut lifts an opponent's chin into a vulnerable position, and the hook knocks the opponent out. These many punch types can be thrown in quick succession to produce combinations, or combos. The 1-2 combo is the most typical jab and cross combination. This is typically a powerful combination because the jab obscures the opponent's view of the cross, making it easier to land cleanly and strongly. A roundhouse, haymaker, overhand, or sucker punch is a large, swinging circular punch that begins from a cocked-back position with the arm at a greater extension than the hook and all of the fighter's weight behind it. The roundhouse, which relies on body weight and centripetal force in a wide arc, can be a strong strike. But it is frequently a wild and uncontrolled punch that leaves the fighter off balance and with an open guard. Wide, looping blows have the additional drawback of taking longer to deliver, giving the opponent adequate time to react and counter. As a result, the haymaker or roundhouse is not a standard punch, and trainers see it as a sign of bad technique or desperation. Because of its enormous potential strength, it has occasionally been used to finish off an already reeling opponent who appears incapable or unlikely to capitalize on the unfortunate position it leaves the puncher in. Another uncommon punch is the BOLO punch, in which the opponent swings one arm out multiple times in a wide arc, usually as a distraction, before delivering with that or the other arm. A rabbit punch is an illegal blow delivered to the back of the head or neck. Both the hook and the uppercut can be thrown with both hands, which results in different footwork and positioning than when delivered with the other hand. Generally, the reverse is true for footwork and torso movement. Defense. A boxer can employ many fundamental movements to escape or block punches, which are pictured and explained more below. Slipping turns the body slightly, allowing an oncoming punch to pass safely adjacent to the head. As the opponent's punch approaches, the boxer quickly twists his hips and shoulders. This positions the chin sideways, allowing the blow to slip past. Muhammad Ali, like an early Mike Tyson, was known for his extraordinarily rapid and close slips. Sway or fade anticipate a punch and move the upper body or head back so that it misses or has a significantly reduced force. Also known as rolling with the punch or riding the punch. Bob and weave, bobbing moves the head laterally and beneath an incoming punch. As the opponent's strike approaches, the boxer immediately bends his legs and adjusts his torso slightly right or left. After evading the strike, the fighter weaves back to an upright position, appearing on the outside or inside of the opponent's outstretched arm. Bobbing to the outside refers to moving outside of your opponent's extended arm. To move inside the opponent's extended arm is called bobbing to the inside. Joe Frazier, Jack Dempsey, Mike Tyson, and Rocky Marciano were masters of bobbing and weaving. Parry block to defend against oncoming punches. Boxers parry or block with their shoulders, hands, or arms. A block generally accepts a punch, whereas a parry deflects it. A palm, catch, or cuff defense is one that purposely takes the incoming punch on the palm section of the defender's glove. Cover up the last defense against an impending blow to an exposed face or torso, aside from rolling with a punch, is to cover yourself. Typically, the forearms are tucked against the torso to prevent body shots, and the hands are held high to shield the head and chin. The boxer rotates the hips to defend the body, allowing incoming punches to roll off the guard. With the forearms parallel and pointing outward, the boxer slams both fists against the front of the face to shield the head. This kind of guard is vulnerable to below-ground attacks. Clinch, when the gap between two combatants has closed and straight blows are no longer an option. Clinching, a brutal kind of wrestling or trapping, occurs. In this position, the boxer seeks to tie up the opponent's hands, preventing him from throwing hooks or uppercuts. To conduct a clinch, the boxer wraps both hands around the outside of the opponent's shoulders and scoops back under the forearms to tightly grip the opponent's arms against his own body. In this position, the opponent's arms are pinned and unable to attack. Clinching is a transient match situation that is rapidly dispelled by the referee. Clinching is technically against the rules, and in amateur fights, points are swiftly docked for it. However, it is doubtful that points will be docked for a clinch in professional boxing. Unorthodox strategies. Rope-a-dope. The rope-a-dope tactic, which Muhammad Ali used in his 1974 The Rumble in the Jungle match against George Foreman, is leaning back against the ropes, covering up defensively as much as possible, and allowing the opponent to throw multiple blows. The back-leaning position, which does not lead the defending boxer to become unbalanced as it would during typical backward movement, but increases the distance between the defender's head and his opponent, increasing the likelihood that blows miss their intended target. Weathering the hits that land on the defender encourages the opponent to waste energy while saving his or her own. If effective, the assaulting opponent will ultimately tire, exposing defensive gaps for the boxer to exploit. In modern boxing, the rope-a-dope is largely discouraged since most opponents are not deceived by it and few boxers have the physical endurance to survive a protracted, unanswered attack. Manny Pacquiao, the A-Division world champion, employed the approach to assess the strength of welterweight titleist Miguel Cotto in November 2009. Pacquiao followed up his rope-a-dope gambit with a crushing knockout. Tyson Fury attempted this against Francesco Pianito, but it did not go as easily. BOLO punch. The BOLO punch, which is occasionally seen in Olympic boxing, is an arm strike whose force is derived from the shortening of a circular arc rather than the transference of body weight. It has a greater impact owing to the surprise of the strange angle it lands at than the actual power of the punch. This punch is more of a gimmick than a technical maneuver. It is not taught, and it is on the same level of boxing technique as the ollie. Check hook. A check hook is used to keep aggressive boxers from lunging in. The check hook consists of two pieces. The first portion consists of a standard hook. The second and hardest part is the footwork. As the opponent surges in, the boxer should throw the hook, pivot with his left foot, and swing his right foot 180 degrees around. If accomplished perfectly, the aggressive fighter will rush in and float harmlessly by his opponent, similar to a bull missing a matador. This is uncommon in professional boxing since it needs a wide range of skill levels to accomplish. Technically speaking, there is no such thing as a check hook. It is merely a hook given to an opponent who has surged forward and past his opponent, hooking him on the way. Others claim that the check hook exists, but is an unlawful punch since it is a pivot punch, which is prohibited in the sport. Floyd Mayweather Jr. used a check hook against Ricky Hatton, sending Hatton flying headfirst into the corner post and knocking him down. Practitioner's outro. The practitioners of the Street Fighter series who have gained notice in boxing includes Mike, who uses the Brawler Slugger style. Balrog, who uses the Swarmer Infighter style. Dudley, who uses a Boxer Puncher style. And Ed, who uses the classic Boxer Outfighter style. Other boxers in the Street Fighter universe are Jay, Ray, Billy, and 2P from the Final Fight series who all uses the Brawler Slugger style. Bowman Delgado from the Rival School series uses the Swarmer Infighter style. Cracker Jack from Street Fighter X series and Fighting EX Layer who uses the Brawler Slugger style. Scott and Max from the Street Fighter 2 opening scene who uses the Brawler Slugger style. And Cody Travers has elements of Brawler Slugger style in his fighting style. Paying attention to this information, you will understand what type of boxing character each practitioner is in the Street Fighter universe. That is what I have gathered on the fighting style boxing. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Warriors.